This is Vivica Williams, and you're watching Head to Head. Ukraine wants to be self-sufficient in gas production by 2020, which means increasing production by 35%. And recently, Ukraine made a major step towards its gas independence by restarting exports of its own natural gas to Europe for the first time in 15 years. To discuss this and other prospects for increasing gas production in Ukraine, we welcome to our studio Vira Konstantynova. She's a political analyst and an expert on international energy relations. Vira, thank you for joining us.
My pleasure.
So let's talk about, this is a really major step with gas production for Ukraine. And as you know, Ukraine has a huge potential to increase production. And this has been an issue for years now, since when I used to work in industry of gas analysis. And it was always kind of rubber stamped of what needs to be done and what's not being done. So can you tell us what's changed in the last few years that Ukraine is really starting to actually do something when it comes to improving its production?
Yes, that's true, because since 2014, Ukraine has undertaken significant steps towards energy independence. But I would like to begin with this fact that Ukraine was dependent on Russian gas. Not only Ukraine, but also the European Union, our relevant partner. And since 2014, when the Russian aggression had started, Ukraine realized that not only within the military field, but also, as you probably know, we have gas, some kind of tension
it's
situations.
Often used as a political tool.
Yes,
right.
Political tool, and political tool for what? For energy dictatorship.
Absolutely.
This was the reason, actually, to undertake measures towards energy independence. Not only reverse with the European Union, but also Ukrainian government and Ukrainian parliament had adopted several regulations according to the third energy package of the European Union, according to our obligations within the association agreement. Thus, for Ukraine, I would say that these several years was remarkable, because if we look at the production, especially if we look at the production, we have rather positive effect. Absolutely true that Ukraine right now is still dependent on the transit and still dependent on Russian gas. But that's important to notice that Ukraine hasn't transferred Russian gas from Russia, directly from Russia. We have our European partners, we have Slovaks, we have Hungaries, and they help us to become independent, energy independent. But at the same time, according to the concept 2020, Ukraine undertakes measures to increase domestic production for energy independence.
And let's talk about some of those measures that Ukraine is undertaking. So let's talk maybe start with just the actual gas transit system itself. So this has been an issue. There's been so many calls and attempts and funding to try to upgrade the actual infrastructure. So what has Ukraine been undertaken with this?
The problem is with the transmission system that we have transit at least 100 billion cubic meters from Russian to European Union. Thus, Ukrainian transmission system is very important, not only for Ukraine, not only for Ukrainian economy, but also for security of supply of the European Union. As you probably know, that last year in December, we have the first round of consultations between the Gazprom, Naftogaz, and in January, I guess, there was a political round. The most important message from this consultation is that from Ukrainian side, we have introduced many legal acts that directly involved European legislation, based on European legislation. At the same time, Gazprom, the Russian side, proposed Ukraine and the European Union to come back to the previous terms and conditions. As you probably know, at the end of this year, the transit contract between Naftogaz and Gazprom would finish. Thus, we need the new contract. especially in the context of the energy security and energy security of supply of natural gas to Europe. Thus, it would be interesting to watch on these negotiations, because I think that mostly within the Ukrainian side, Ukrainian position is simple. Let's have a new contract on European rules. That's simple.
Right.
Because it's the precondition for energy security of Ukraine. European Union has also, it's also our partner and realizes the risks and threats from energy security and energy diplomacy of the Russian Federation. I hope that several months would show us the great tandem, I guess, in the context of energy security of the continent.
And this is definitely necessary when it comes to the transiting gas, that Ukraine have a new agreement, contract that that, as you said, takes into consideration and meets all European legislation. So when we look back at Ukraine's production of gas, that's with the transit, what are we seeing with Ukraine increasing its own production of gas? And as we said, you know, for the first time in 15 years, Ukraine ever actually exported its own gas that's been produced. So what are we seeing on that side?
You know, according to the latest developments, online auctions on the how to say license on production have already introduced by the Key State Geological Service in order to promote, facilitate the process of increasing the production. But at the same time, if we step back and look at the situation from the global perspective, we should be realistic, because Ukraine right now, according to the 2018, we have already produced 20 billion cubic meters. It's a nice figure, but it's not enough for Ukrainian, even for domestic consumption. According to the data of the Naftogaz, according to the data of state services, we have nice, positive dynamic. But we would see the result a bit later.
And when it comes to the legal issues, so I know in the past with PSAs, this is the public sharing agreements in which a company can sign on to develop the gas, and the government works along with them. And there was a lot of legal issues with this in the past, which kind of made it not a very good environment that companies would want to invest in. So what has changed with PSAs?
You know, according to the from the legal perspective, since 2015, new law on natural gas market have been already introduced. But I think that, according to my personal point of view, the market is not already founded, but at the same time we have a positive dynamic in the context of investment interest into the production field, especially upstream sector. It's very interesting for global energy market players. Thus, I hope that in few years Ukraine would have energy autonomous, and in perspective we would have energy independence, and we would become an exporter of natural gas. But it's you know, it depends on always on the geopolitical context. That's why for Ukraine, national energy interest, it would be a very interesting issue.
And are you able to talk a bit about what Ukraine has done on the legal front to be able to increase production?
You know, according, as I have already mentioned, according to the concept, as I know, the government have already updated the concept 2020 on the increase in production, and according to the latest developments within the auction system, within the PCA tenders, we should wait for a minute. We should wait for some month. We would have an impact on this. We would have impact on production only at the end of this year. But at the same time, December 29, we have a deadline with a transit contract with Gazprom.
And what other steps do you see the Ukrainian government doing to increase independence and move away from being a transit country to a producer?
It's a very complex issue, how to establish, how to create energy independence paradigm even within the society. But as you probably know, within the parliament there is already the draft law on ensuring energy security. According to this draft law, there is a very nice tool for promoting energy independence and to ensure energy diplomacy, appropriate energy diplomacy. For Ukraine, as a young democracy, we should be realistic. We should promote, cooperation between our partners, within our partners from the European side, and we should play great games according to the energy diplomacy with the other partners, I mean, for example, the United States of America. But at the same time, we have two global critical issues dedicated to the energy security of Ukraine, I mean Nord Stream 2 and Turkish Stream. For us, for Ukraine, it's totally out of national interest. It would mean that Ukraine
was even out of the interest of the EU itself when it comes to their own
many
independence.
experts pay attention to that, but according to the latest negotiation on the transit contract, I would say that from the European side there is key understanding on the risks and threats. But at the same time, we have, according to all strategic documents within the European Union, European Union needs gas. But the question is, what is about diversification of routes, of producers, of? It's important from the from the geopolitical point of view. Whereas geopolitics is only politics. That's simple. But I would say that I have no illusions regarding the behavior of the Gazprom, because when it comes to rule of law, we see the result. That's why for Ukraine and for the European Union, it would be better to stay on the one side.
Okay, well, thank you so much for being with us today to talk about this issue.
Thank you.
And that was Vira Konstantynova, political analyst and an expert on international energy relations. Thank you for watching and stay tuned with UATV for more.